Ubisoft is going wild with new weapons and armor sets. If you namely pre-order the Dawn of Ragnarok expansion, which of course launches on March 10th, you will already right now get the special Twilight set with a decent mount. I do like it in the snowy settlement right now, but overall it just looks like a scarier or more evil version of the Wrath of the Druids mount. It only sounds a bit angrier though. The bird is also fine, a raven with some lava effects and glowing eyes, but maybe you already guessed it, it's all about the perks from this armor and the axe. On a light finisher, ice shards will namely fall from the sky, which first of all looks crazy. You summon this cloud which hangs over the enemies, dropping ice shards down for 10 seconds, dealing damage to a lot of the enemies in the area. So on the item card we see that it has a 20-second cooldown, but you could actually argue that it's 10 seconds, because the cooldown perk immediately appears after summoning the cloud. Then the cloud stays for 10 seconds, and then you have to wait another 10 seconds before you can have the cloud appear again. And enemies inside the clouds that are getting hit also deal 5% reduced damage, which doesn't sound like a lot, and in practice it also doesn't really matter. Like this Drangir normally deals this amount from my health bar, and now with the debuff, you cannot really tell the difference, because yeah, it's 5%, so that's not really to write home about. It's more about the damage over time, which can crit by the way, although we did try and build more crit chance, but that doesn't really seem to impact the crits of this perk. Although, with only weapons and runes, you can of course not really go that far. And maybe you already noticed that these ice shards are falling down and hitting the enemies physically, but they do not take damage. And that's because it's more a damage over time, where like every 3 seconds the enemies get hit. So you get like 3 hits in if they stand under the cloud for the full effect. So sure, it's not the best perk or anything, but being able to summon a cloud is insane. I think it looks really cool. Normally we find these perks on weapons, like recently I did a video on the broken weapons, which I will link to in the video description for if you haven't checked it out yet. But yeah, with these visual effects now being on an armor set, you can combine it with some of those crazy weapons, like the two-handed sword from that broken weapons pack. Then on a light finisher, you both get the fragments erupting from the ground and the cloud with the ice shards. So I really would not be surprised if this is just the start of crazy armor perks that we will see in the future. And yes, maybe you already saw me do a heavy combo finisher too, which creates another even more powerful effect. Let's go more into that and also the visuals of this armor set, which have an interesting wrinkle by the way. Of course, if you like the video so far, then leaving a like on it would really help me out. Subscribe of course for everything Assassin's Creed if you haven't already, and congrats to the for winning my previous Helix credit pack giveaway. I will reach out to you and already started a brand new one for 2,300 credits. You can enter via the link in the pinned comment, and be sure you are a subscriber of the channel if you want to participate. So next to the cloud with the ice shards on a light finisher, you also get this fiery explosion on a heavy finisher, which will deal a lot of damage and also ignite enemies, so deal a lot of damage over time and spread it to other enemies close by too, thanks to the battlefield cremation skill. So yeah, you wanna like combine them, use the cloud first and then focus on the heavy hits to have this fiery explosion, then focus on the light finisher again. And you can make this heavy finisher even more powerful with fire buildup. You already find 10 as the first perk on the armor set, which is actually quite a lot, but having runes on your bow is also smart because these count for your whole character and not just for a single weapon. And then you will watch enemies catch fire even faster, instantly in most cases, and just die really fast. So watch this, for example. I love this camp because a lot of enemies spawn close to each other. On just one heavy finisher combo, you can watch all the enemies die in front of your eyes. So while the perk itself is not as visually appealing as the ice shards, it's totally more powerful even with the 15-second cooldown. Sure, a heavy attack combo takes longer to pull off, but you can just do 2 light attacks and then finish the combo off with a slower heavy attack to trigger the effect. And yes, there are more effects you can trigger on a heavy finisher. Combining this armor with the Excalibur lets you have this fire explosion, the blast from the sword, and you see even poison here as well, which is from the major rune I put on the blade. You can make some really fun combinations. Remember the spinning death flail where you drop a bomb on a heavy finisher? You likely already know what's gonna happen now, right? Like, this combo is insane too. So, toying around with the armor and other weapons is a blast. And I think that this is how it should be, not what we saw with the Shinobi armor, which I touched on in a previous video. With that pack, you are forced to use all the items together, otherwise they're pretty much useless. Now you can choose different weapon combinations or to use it with the axe that comes with the Twilight Pack, which is still great, because if you do a heavy finisher with this axe, the initial damage of the blast always crits. And before we take a closer look at this axe, let's focus on the look of the Twilight armor set first, with the eye patch, which of course makes sense, as we will be playing Odin again in the Dawn of Ragnarok DLC. But I noted in my initial Dawn of Ragnarok video, also linked to that in the video description, that this was the Twilight Pack that we saw in the cinematic trailer and in all the artworks. But while it is very similar, I don't think it actually is that armor set, because we're missing the fire and ice touches. Well, seems like in that DLC we get a similar looking armor set called the Odin All-Father set. AndyReloads in his video actually leaked the armor set already. He showed a green version, so maybe there are like multiple upgrade rarities that all have a different look, and that one of them will be the regular blue one we see in the cinematic and in all the artworks. So that is kind of weird that one of the main armor sets from the Dawn of Ragnarok will be a reskin of an armor set we can already get right now by pre-ordering that same DLC. At least the perks on the Twilight set seem to be completely different from the Odin All-Father set. Completely unique, just like what we see on the X. This is namely the first time we're seeing a weapon that has a perk for a guaranteed crit, namely on a finisher, with crits on finishers also doing double damage, but only if you use this X alone, so without any other weapons. Again, doing the 2 light attacks and then ending that with a heavy attack is the fastest way to trigger a finisher, and putting speed runes on the X is smart as well. And having things that trigger on crits is great in combination with this too, like wearing the Mentor set, so you get attack and a speed buff on crits. Sure, it's not as good as wearing the Twilight set, but if you want to change things up, then that's totally possible. And there is something weird going on, maybe you already saw it a bit in the footage, because now, a couple of times after a finisher, the next hits with this X were all crits. Like, we had 100% crit chance for a really long time out of nowhere, and this seems like a hidden effect or a bug or something. So yeah, that totally makes this axe even stronger. And the design is of course based on the axe we see in Jotunheim, the one that Suttungr, the boss, grabs mid-fight. But now with some lava on the axe as well. So happy that we finally got it. And good to note is that this Twilight Pack is available till April 9th. So you can just wait for reviews for Dawn of Ragnarok if you're not sure about the DLC, and then buy it at launch, and then you will still get all the items I talked about here. Like, it totally makes the $40 expansion a little easier to swallow, although they totally need to show way more before I'm like convinced that it's worth the price, especially looking at the quality of the previous DLCs for the game. I will, by the way, make a video with more on the Dawn of Ragnarok very soon. Got an interview with some answers from the developers, so very, very interesting stuff. Subscribe for that and way more Valhalla content. A like on the video would really help me out. And don't check out my previous video on the Shinobi armor and things I liked and did not like about that one. It's pretty interesting. For now, I'll speak to you in the next one. Goodbye.